What is it that you want to do in life that you're not sure if you can or you ever will? Is it starting a business? Is it traveling the world? Perhaps it's having children or writing a book. Well, that was actually my experience and my thought at one point in my life. I never thought I could write a book, but guess what? I did. And really, honestly, during the busiest time in my life. But I got inspired and I chose to be obedient to what I believe was a call and a mission to tell my story. So today I'm here to share a few tips for what you can do in the event that you too, put the emphasis on the wrong part, you too want to write a book. The first thing that I would suggest is to identify what you want to write about, right? Take inventory of the things in your life that you could write about, right? I always like to say that you're an expert in your own experience. And so even just that alone is an idea or inspiration for what you could write, a story that you could tell. There's somebody in the world that can benefit from some of the experiences that you've had, some of the knowledge that you've obtained over the course of your life. One of the next things I would suggest is to brainstorm and just start to jot down ideas. Don't worry about the structure yet. Don't worry about the outline. I started with a note in my phone. From there, I started to break the outline out by concept or sections, which later then became the chapters. And I would just jot down notes and ideas for each section as they came to me. And then this segues into the next thing that I would suggest is to just start writing. Just write anything, everything, anywhere. Write with the creative mind too. I would say don't write with an editorial mind. Don't overthink. Don't overanalyze what it is that you're saying or how you're saying it or how it's going to come across. This will come later. And so if you can kind of compartmentalize it and write it from put the creative hat on and just let it flow, I believe that you will have less limitations and less stagnation because you won't be thinking about it from the perspective of, how it should flow and how it should fit. And you may even surprise yourself. You may read some of that stuff back that you were just getting out and just writing out. You'll read it back and you'll be surprised at how good you actually are at this. Simultaneously, depending on what it is that you're writing about, there may be some research that's involved, maybe some interviews that you conduct. I know for my book, I did a series of interviews. I sent out a series of surveys because I wanted to get feedback about other people's experiences who had a similar story to mine and been on similar journeys. And so I wanted to incorporate those pieces of their stories so that way there are multiple perspectives and multiple voices that can be communicated through my story and that the reader can identify with. The next thing I would say is to reread what you write and then edit as necessary. So as I mentioned, when you're in the creative mode, just let it flow. But reread it and make changes as needed, and add to it, expand upon it, and just allow yourself to be in a different frame of mind when you go back to reread it, and different things will come to you. You'll be in a different headspace. You'll be looking at it and coming at it from a different perspective than you were when you initially wrote it. And so it may allow you to flesh it out a little bit more. But again, do your best not to judge yourself for what you wrote, because again, this is your story, and whatever it is that you're writing, whatever it is that you're telling, whether it's you're sharing an experience or you're sharing your knowledge, you have a unique voice. And so make sure that you are allowing that voice to be heard. Set a weekly goal. And so the way that I did this was I broke it down based on how many chapters that I had established within my outline that just kind of developed over time. And I committed to doing a certain number of chapters a week. You could also base it off of the number of words that you think you might write, the number of pages that you'll have in the book, and then break down your weekly goal based on your timeline, right? So that's another thing you'll have to establish is, when do you want the book to be done by? If you want to write the book within 6 months and you want to write 100 pages within those 6 months, then you would just break it down by week with however many pages you need to write within that time frame in order for you to reach your target date. And I would challenge you to really commit to this, and know that if you don't, right, for every week that you miss, it's fine, right? You can still accomplish it. It'll just move your target date out. Right. So just know that going into it. And if you're okay with that, then by all means, give yourself the space and the grace to move through it in the best way possible. But if you do have a deadline, if you're working with a publisher or whatever other structure that's been established for it, then you'll want to make sure that you stick to that as closely as possible, or otherwise, at whatever week you miss, you'll just have to double up in the weeks to come. I would also suggest, if at all possible, to hire a coach or work with an accountability partner. One of the things that is beneficial in this is if you've established that deadline, you have that target date, this partner, whether it's a coach or an accountability partner, will help you to stick to that goal. You can set a regular cadence of how often you check in. You can check in weekly, maybe once a month, whatever makes sense, in order for you to just be held accountable to what you've set for yourself. So towards the completion of my book, and now mind you, this was a very busy season in my life. I had a newborn and I was pregnant with my second child and due to give birth soon. I knew that I wanted to finish the project before then, because it would just be delayed even further after I had my second child and, living the 2 under 2 life. That I knew that I needed to make sure that I reached my target date. So what I did near the end, when I just had some final finishing touches to put onto it, was to schedule a writing retreat. So I did an overnight retreat and I just stayed indoors and I just finished my book, right? So if possible, I would suggest or recommend some type of weekend writing retreat, some type of weekend writing getaway, or if you can clear everybody out of your house and you could write there. I would suggest, if possible, to have a secondary location that you could do that, because when we're at home, there are a lot of distractions that can come. You may end up washing some dishes, watching some Netflix, folding some clothes. And so when you're in another environment, then you are focused on the task at hand. You're not distracted, ideally not distracted by anything else. So again, highly recommend it if at all possible. And if not, whether it's just a few hours. So that's another thing that I did along the journey. And in order to meet my weekly goals, is I would go away for a few hours when I could. So going to either Barnes and Noble or Starbucks and just having a writing session there, or when my kids were asleep, I take the opportunity to write. I think sometimes too, we will not give ourselves enough credit for what we can accomplish in short periods of time. So even if you have a window of 20 or 30 minutes that you can write a few sentences, or even just rework your outline, or get inspired and maybe, send out a couple emails if you do need to gather some input, or do some Google searches if you need to do research. Like allowing yourself to utilize the time that you do have available to you to make those incremental that incremental progress towards ultimately reaching and accomplishing your goal. Also, if possible, I would suggest working with an editor for developmental edits, line edits, grammar, spelling, and just general flow. If you are not in a position to hire an editor, if there's someone in your life that is skilled in that area that wouldn't mind reading it over for you, I would definitely suggest doing that, because a lot of times when we write, we'll read it back in the way that we intended to write it. And the way that we wrote it may not have been the way that it should have been written. So whether that's, the grammar or the spelling or just the general flow, or maybe even you thought you were conveying something that the reader is not putting together, that this other person can be able to tell you and give you that feedback to say, this part doesn't really make sense here. This isn't really flowing, or what do you mean here? Because again, we know what we mean, but sometimes it doesn't really come across in that manner. All right, so after you've got the meat and potatoes of the book, right? You've written it, you've gotten the structure down, you've gotten your chapters together, you've had somebody read it over and look at it. Then we start to kind of package it, right? And one of the things that is a really big part of this package is the cover, right? I know we say
you shouldn't judge a book by its cover,
but guess what? Most of us do. And so I really would suggest not cutting corners here, and make sure that you either, if you're skilled at doing it, that you put a lot of thought into what your cover design will be, or if you're in a position to hire someone, then hire someone who is really skilled at this, and really try not to cut corners here, because again, it's the first thing that people see when they are looking for books and looking for something to read, looking for something that speaks to them. The cover is what speaks to them before the words within the book actually does. And even before the book description and book summary that's on the back or whatever other content, the first thing that we see is the cover. And whether we should or we shouldn't, many of us judge it. So just put yourself in the best position to be judged in the best possible way. Another part of the full package is how the book is formatted, right? So you can purchase formatting software. And so by formatting, I mean just like what the fonts are and, the front matter and the back matter. So like the copyright page and the dedication page and the about the author page, like all of that goes into the formatting. If you want it italicized in one part, you want it bold in another, all of that is part of the packaging and part of the formatting. You can purchase software for a pretty, reasonable price. But you could also, if you don't want to, because it does take some time. So if you would rather just have somebody else do it for you, you could pay somebody else to do it. If you plan on writing multiple books, I would suggest, if you're in a position to purchase the software, because then you can use it for any books that you write in the future. So as you were writing, you were rereading and making edits as you felt, inspired to. So once you have the final product, I would suggest reading it again, because again, there's often times that we miss certain things, or we want to communicate something a little bit differently. And so what I did was I would just created a PDF of the formatted file, right? So the book with the final packaging, and went through that, because sometimes things will get adjusted, or, the formatting will be like, it'll be one line on one page. And I don't know about y'all, but that kind of grinds my gears. So I try to do what I can to get it all on the other page. But anyway, like little things like that, you'll want to go through your final product and make those adjustments. So I just PDF'd it and put little sticky notes on the things that I needed to adjust, or as I was reading it through, I caught some additional errors, or I wanted to change how I said something. So that's an opportunity, kind of like a final opportunity, if you will, to really make those edits and adjustments before you publish. So there's other nuances and things like, getting your ISBNs, and maybe if you want to create a website and then you have SEO, depending on where you want to publish it. If you're going to publish through Amazon, then there's a whole process of uploading to KDP. So I won't get into those nuances in this video, but I did want to just kind of go over the general outline of the book writing process, in case anyone is feeling led to, and this is kind of your sign to maybe to do it, right? Because again, at one point I thought I couldn't, and look at me, I did it. It's right there. That's my book, y'all. So, hope you. Oh no, I hit the mic. So hope you got something out of today's video. If you want to learn more about, we can get into more of the details of the process, but I do want you to feel like it's possible. I believed at one point in my life that I could never do this, and I did it. And I did it in the busiest time of my life. I had an infant. I was pregnant, about to give birth to my daughter, and did some editing when she was a newborn, and 2 under 2 life was lifing. And I published it when my daughter was 6 months and my son was about a year and a half. I know it's cliche to say, like,
If I can do it, you can too.
but I really believe that you can. Like, if you really apply yourself, and if you want it that bad, like, let me be inspiration to you. Like, I thought I couldn't, and I did. So I believe that you can too. Thanks for tuning in. See you soon.